And live on the telephone, we are not worthy. It's Frank Roddham. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Frank, what can I say? I've had a look at your career, and it's just amazing what you've done.
Oh, bless you.
Now, the fact is, let's start from the beginning. With BBC One, you started with, was the creator of the phenomenal TV show MasterChef.
Oh, great. Yes, that's great. We love MasterChef.
Oh, we do. And of course, it's a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, it's been sold in so many countries in the same format as well. I mean, how did you get on to thinking about creating MasterChef? What was the idea? What was the notion behind what is a phenomenal show?
Well, it's strange. I was actually at 20th Century Fox in Los Angeles, and I was sharing this long corridor with lots of very now famous directors and producers. And we're all joking with each other, and I was always taking the mickey out of America. And so they got back at me about British food, and they said, oh, it's terrible, it's really bad. And at the time, if you came to a restaurant in England, you either went to a high-end Italian or French restaurant, or you went to a greasy spoon. And they said all the vegetables are overcooked, the meat is overcooked, it's terrible food. And I said, look, if you go to the homes, there's incredible food in the homes. Like, if you go to Northumberland and you go to Cornwall, there's amazing stuff like brandy butter for Christmas and all sorts of other things. And that was basically the genesis. That was what got me going. And later on, excuse me, I just came up with this idea for the program. What happened? My wife at the time had said, look, I'm directing children's programs, but I really I'm a graduate in literature. I want to do something serious. So I wrote the outline for MasterChef off the top of my head and gave it to her. And she said, anyway, 6 months later, I said, what did you do with that? And she said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do Shakespeare. So I said, okay, give it back to me. And we were divorced. So I took it back. And about 2 years later, I'd formed a company in London, and I needed something, I call it the base of my pyramid, something to support all the expenses. So I then took in MasterChef to BBC, and it took about 2 years to convince them to do it, little by little, and then we started off with 13 shows.
Wow, and were you surprised at how worldwide that this show was about to become?
Yeah. Well, what happened is when the BBC had it in its first incarnation, they never sold it. They didn't think cooking programs were good sellers, and their department for selling things was more interested in big dramas and stuff like that, so they didn't sell it. And so we asked them for it back, and they said, let us sell it. And we tweaked it slightly, made it a bit more zippier, and brought it back, and then we started handling in the sales. And now it sells in 200 countries, and there are about 70 foreign versions making their own version of it.
Wow. And of course, did you meet and collaborate with Lloyd Grossman?
Yes, in the early days, Lloyd was my choice because older viewers, and you'd have to be in your 70s to remember this, listeners, I mean, there was a man called Gilbert Harding who used to be on BBC, and he was controversial because he was liked and disliked. I thought, Lloyd could fit that bill, and he would create conversation. And the truth of the matter is that Lloyd is a real foodie expert and a terrific man, so I was very pleased to get him.
Wow. Now, let's move on to more TV success with Alvida's Own Pet. Of course, a northeastern show in the sense of, like, most of the actors came from the northeast.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Well, Alvida's Own Pet was a response to my friends from Stockton. My greatest friend I grew up with is a man called Mick Connell, and he was, best man at my wedding, and I was best man at his, and we great pals. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he's a terrific man. And when I came back from one of my trips, I think I was in Hollywood at the time, I came back a bit earlier, and I came back from London, and there was nobody there. All my mates had disappeared from Stockton. I thought, this is very strange. Where have they all gone? And they'd all gone to Germany. because there was no work little work in the Northeast. A lot of the traditional trades had gone under, and so I thought, wow, this is interesting. And eventually, I went out to see them in Germany, Stuttgart, and hung out with these guys. And I thought, this is could be a terrific idea for a series. And I was in Los Angeles, and Ian LaFreniere and Dick Clement, the writers of, wonderful writers, writers of the Likely Lads, I told them about the idea and pitched it to them and said, would you like to write this? And Ian LaFreniere said, I love this so much, I want to go home now and write it after lunch. So we then pulled a deal together with ATV and convinced them, because of my success at ATV and because of the love of Dick and Ian that British Broadcasting had for them, ATV in this case, they gave us a 13-part series without even doing a pilot, and they also said they let us cast unknowns.
Wow.
So, it was and the characters were based on the people I met. They were based on Mick from Stockton and guys from Darlington and, guys from Middlesbrough. And because Ian is a Geordie, they shifted it up a river, 2 rivers, up to Newcastle. And I was happy with that. I wanted them to be happy as writers. And anyway, it was a great collaborative effort. Great spark from me, great writing from the two Ian and Dick, and wonderful actors.
And of course, iconic actors: Tim Healy, Jimmy Nail, Kevin Whately, Christopher Fairbanks, Pat Roach, Timothy Spall. Just amazing actors to work with.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I didn't direct that. I was. And the people who made the series, it's terrific. I created the format, created the storylines, and then I was making a film in Hollywood, so I wasn't available to direct it. But I had worked with some of the actors before. Tim Spall had been in Quadrophenia, one of my films, and a couple of the other guys I'd worked with before. So all in all, it worked out really well.
Yeah, and of course, going to your fantastic film success as well, Quadrophenia, working with Sting, Leslie Ash, Phil Daniels, and Raymond Winston. What a guy! Yeah,
Ray Winston's a terrific guy, wonderful, all good people. I mean, Sting was completely unknown at the time. He was about to release his first album. In fact, I remember we were shooting in Brighton, and he asked us to readjust our schedule so that he could go and appear on the Old Grey Whistle test. And we said, sure, and or Top of the Pops, one of the two. And he released his first album the week that the film came out, Quadrophenia came out. So he piggybacked his publicity on the back of our publicity, which is very good for all of us. And look, he's a tremendous success, isn't he?
Of course. And of course you directed the award-winning TV dramas Dummy, which won the prestigious Prix Italia Drama Prize.
Yes.
Directed the Grammy-nominated, Golden Globe-nominated US miniseries Moby Dick and Cleopatra as well.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Wow. And of course you have, you founded the chairman of ZG Publishing, including many titles, The Last Templar, which sold over 5 million copies.
I know that's a wild thing. It's very interesting. Look, I'm a working class boy from the northeast of England. I come from Norton-on-Tees. For some reason, it used to annoy me from the very first time I got on a bus, and the bus inspector started treating us like second-class citizens. I felt this like fire inside me that I'm not gonna take this, and I sort of like so I thought, publishing is so snobby. It's such a world of like, it's such an in-crowd snobby thing. I thought, I can do this. So I published the first book, which is One for Sorrow, and we sold that in 46 countries. So that did very well for the company. I soon learned that publishing is a very fickle business. The second book we sold 300 copies.
Wow.
And then they cost money to develop and print. The third book was The Last Templar, and it sold 5.5 million copies now.
Yeah.
And it's terrific. So I thought, we've cracked the world of publishing, we've cracked the world of television, We've cracked the world of cinema to some extent. What next, you know?
Exactly. I mean, you know, you've done everything and everything, haven't you, as far as TV, radio, and, of course, film. The Lords of Disciples, you directed that.
Yeah, Lords of Discipline. Yeah,
Discipline, sorry. Judge Reinhold, Bill Paxton, Michael Bain.
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. K2, director of that, again with Michael Bain. You know, I'm in awe at your career, because just looking down, just to pick out a few points here, the Canterbury Tales you did, Cleopatra, Moby Dick, The Crow Road, and then Gentlemanly Act. Now, I remember the Canterbury Tales. I used to watch that avidly as a child, and I loved the writing, the direction. Fantastic.
Yeah, there was a great. See, the thing about the interesting about film and television is it's a great team effort. You know, when I did Cleopatra as a miniseries I made for America, I was shooting in Morocco. I had a crew of 600 people, right? And that's without the extras. On one day, I had, I think, 1,300 extras, 700 of them on horseback. I mean, you need a lot of help from a lot of talented people. You know, like you're like the front, you're the person pushing it and driving it. You're like the captain of the ship. But you have to have terrific people, and I was very fortunate to pick really good people to work with, and the wise thing is always to learn from the people you work with. You know, people who are more experienced, and so you know, it wasn't that I was being saintly or anything like that. It's a smart way to go. You know, it's about. So I work with great people, and I had a wonderful success because of them.
And of course, if you enjoy what you do, it makes it so much better, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And you know, the great thing for me was that I came from Norton-on-Tees, you know, born in '46. I started traveling from an early age. I was in Afghanistan. I was all over the place. I was in Egypt. I was hitchhiking around with no money, no credit cards, no mobile phones, and no foreign language. I was an ignorant little lad, but I was out there, you know, and I picked up so much information and so much learning, and then I thought, look, if I can do this, I can. Why can't I do film? You know, I love cinema, and I don't know if you know this, but in Norton, there used to be two cinemas in Norton. One was called the Modern, which was like Art Deco building, and one was called the Cinema, the Flea Pit, which is the old one. They were right at the end of my street on Drake Road. I used to go there, sneak in there 3 times a week. I saw all the great movies as a kid, and I never thought cinema was available to me. And I was working as an extra on a film in Greece when I was traveling, and I thought, I like this. It's available. I can do it. And I came back to London, went to film school, and then took it from there.
Was it, as a youngster, you going to see these films, was that the inspiration that gave you to do such great work?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, the passion for cinema came from my childhood, yes. I mean, we grew up in the age of the Western, you know, Randolph Scott, John Wayne, and, you know, and it's like, you know, and, you know, I got to work with Gregory Peck. When I was doing Moby Dick, he wanted to be he'd been in the original Moby Dick, which John Huston had directed, and he wanted to play a part in this one. He'd had a fight with Orson Welles, and he was very angry with him. So he said, I want to play his part, and I want to do it better than him. So suddenly, my new best friend is Gregory Peck. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like, these legends from my childhood are suddenly my associates and my friends. And that was a big kick, you know.
Wow. And of course, Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenne wrote The Likely Lads, Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, Porridge. I mean, iconic series. And for you to team up with such iconic people as that must have been a great help.
It was terrific. I mean, Ian and Dick are wonderful, you know. I mean, they're really special people, and they remain good friends, and they're a great team. So, you know, again, when I was very young, a teenager, these guys are like, you know, a little bit 6 or 7 years, 8 years, a decade older than me. When suddenly I'm sort of like working with them, and they're taking my ideas and expanding them, and it was excellent fun. But you know, my biggest achievement, which you haven't mentioned, is I have 7 children.
All right. You sound too young.
I wish. No, I have. Yeah, I just like, I guess I have my eldest daughter is 38, and my youngest son is 3.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm like sort of, my mother had great energy, in terms of like, I'm one of 7 myself. I was the 6th boy and then we had a sister. I grew up with a big family. I have a big family, and people go, "Oh my God, it must be so difficult." And it's like, you know what? I love it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. The best productions I had.
And of course, whenever you get the chance, because you're extremely busy, do you ever come up to the Northeast often?
Yeah, I used to come up a lot more when my mother and my father passed away some time ago, my mother too. So I come up less and less. And Mick Connell, unfortunately, passed away. I used to come and see him. But I took a couple of my daughters. I showed them the Northeast. I took them to Whitby. We went to Staves. I showed them Durham Cathedral. We stayed at the Cleveland Tontine. I drive around and. They loved it, and so I'm due for another trip with my little boy. He hasn't been blessed with a trip to the Northeast yet.
Ah, of course, Whitby, fantastic for A, fish and chips,
yeah,
and B, of course, the monument, the Abbey thing.
Oh, it's great, it's great. And I've been married 3 times.
Oh.
Of course. I have, my second wife was was visiting a place in Norfolk, and she said, "This is the best fish and chip shop in the world." In Norfolk, and we went to this very, high-class fish and chip shop, and she said, "No, they're really terrific." And we went there, and I told the guy behind the counter, I said, "My wife says these are the best fish and chips in the world, and they are fantastic, but I think Whitby," he said, "Oh, we were trained by the people from Whitby."
Ah.
So I thought from the Magpie, or whatever it's called. So I thought, good.
Yeah. When I was in Whitby with my sister and my nephew last time, there was an ice cream parlour, and they were doing Dracula ice cream. And when I asked what flavour it was, they said it was licorice.
Oh, I thought it would be blood. I'm sorry.
Very, very weird. So, anything coming up that you're working on at the moment?
Yes, I'm in pre-production. Not in pre-production. I'm in development of two films. One is we're supposed to shoot in Australia. It's called Waltzing Matilda. And that's a bit. It's a kind of. It's like Jeremy Corbyn meets John Wayne. It's an action film, a love story, but it's also about rights. We have this terrible thing at the moment, which I loathe: 0-hour contracts. Believe it or not, there was almost a civil war in Australia in about 1894 because the sheep shearers were on 0-hour contracts. They never knew where the next work was coming from, and they weren't allowed to vote. So they took the government and the army on in order to, and that's how the proper government in Australia was established, because of these guys. So it reminded me very much of what's happening now, and I thought this could be a very good film, even though it's a costume period film. Its values are very good. So that's one, and the other one is an animation film, which is for grown-ups. It's set in Africa. It's about the effects of war on children, and it's too difficult to make as a live-action film. But the script is so good, we're trying to do it as an animation, and a serious animation.
Right. And when will they be coming out?
Well, it's all about chasing cash, We're casting the Australian one, but we still don't have all the funds. And with the animation one, we've started, but it'll be about 2 years from now, because it's a very slow process, all the drawing and all the, it's not something you can whiz through, We have to go through all the stages correctly.
Yeah, and of course animation is a very big pull with cinema audiences at the moment.
Yeah, it is. There was a film called Waltz with Bashir, which won the Oscar for best animated film, and it was a very serious and very interesting film. So I'm trying it out. It's something I've not tried before, and I'm having to become, quickly become an expert. I'm putting some of my MasterChef money into it.
Right, so this is your first foray into animation, then?
Yes.
Right.
Even though I'm familiar with it, and and there are certain techniques which overlap, but. That's the plot.
Wow. Well, Frank, again, thank you ever so much for coming on to Ignition Radio and talking about your illustrious and wonderful, varied and fulfilled career. And, again, just amazing.
If my three brothers live in the Northeast, Bernard, Vincent and Peter. If they happen to be listening, I just want to say hi.
There we go, a little plug. Well, Frank, I could talk to you all day about your career. It's been absolutely a joy, a pleasure, and fantastic talking to you. Thank you once again for coming on Ignition.
Thank you very much. Lovely to speak with you.
Okay, and success with the films and success with the rest of the career, and, of course, all the writing. So busy.
Yes.
Never stops, does it?
That's good, though.
Well, thank you once again, and as I say... wow, absolutely amazing. I'm not usually tongue-tied or speechless, but just looking at your career, it's just amazing.
Ah, bless you. Thanks a lot. I feel like I haven't done enough yet.
Oh, you've done absolutely loads. Anyway, thank you once again, Frank. You take care.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye for now. Bye.